Our next report is about a virus that mostly affects birds. It's called bird flu. We've all heard about it. But here's what we haven't. A human being infected with bird flu and dying because of it. It has happened for the first time. Guess where? In China. The same country that gave us the Wuhan virus now has the first human death because of bird flu. What does it mean for the world? What's next? Human-to-human transmission of bird flu? Are we prepared to deal with this? Our next report has the answers.
The world is trying to overpower a massive bird flu outbreak. This avian flu spell is so widespread that it has affected several countries and nearly all continents. And now, the outbreak seems to be taking a dangerous turn. China has admitted to the world's first human fatality due to bird flu. A 56-year-old female from Guangdong province in China was hospitalized for severe pneumonia last month. She died less than 2 weeks later, and China has admitted that she died due to bird flu. But the admission has come almost a month later. Classic China, delaying critical information from the world. It did the same with the Wuhan virus and is following a similar strategy with the H3N8 virus. H3N8 is an avian influenza strain. Humans aren't supposed to get infected with it, but the Chinese woman caught it. And so have 2 other people in the communist country. At least that's what official Chinese data says. The world has learned the hard way not to trust anything official coming out of China. As is the case with the recent viruses in China, wet markets somehow seem to always be the common factor. Reports say the woman who succumbed to bird flu last month was in a wet market just before she developed symptoms. But there's also a silver lining. The H3N8 subtype of avian influenza is a rare strain, and it does not transmit from person to person. At least that's what the World Health Organization believes. Human infections are usually linked to exposure to infected birds. Humans could also catch the flu if they are exposed to highly contaminated environments, like China's wet markets. The WHO is not panicking yet. It says the risk of bird flu becoming a major public health crisis is low. But pharmaceutical companies aren't taking any chances. They claim they can roll out the vaccine shots within a few months. Vaccine manufacturers like GSK, Moderna, and Seqirus say they are already developing human vaccines. The world is struggling to tackle the biggest bird flu outbreak ever. Over the past year, over 200 million birds have been killed. Countries are culling chickens en masse. Japan alone has killed more than 17 million chickens. But the virus rages on. While health authorities and institutions like the WHO say the chances of bird flu becoming a pandemic are low, the fear is that existing strains of avian flu could mutate and make their way to humans, sparking yet another pandemic.
Speaking of population crisis, sometimes the other end of the spectrum is also a problem, especially when it's about an urban nightmare. Let's turn our attention to New York. It's an American city home to about 8 million people, known for its baseball, pizzas, towering skyscrapers, and rats. Tonight, we'll talk about that last bit. It's impossible to calculate how many rats live in the Big Apple. Estimates from 2014 say about 2 million, but urban legend says there are more rats than people in New York. These rodents are fast, furry, and relentless, and they're everywhere, from parks and subways to inside cupboards and walls. And the city has been at war with them for years. Well, now they have a new commander, New York City's first ever rat czar. Her name is Kathleen Corradi. She's the new director of rodent mitigation, and she's been hired to fight this ratty problem and is being paid $155,000 for it. Here's a report.
Rattus norvegicus. Sounds like the name of a supervillain, right? That may as well be, because we're talking about New York City's most vicious enemy, common brown rats. Every mayor has waged war against them, and mostly lost. Maybe because these rodents have a secret weapon. They know how to play hide and squeak. But have they finally met their match? Meet New York City's first ever rat czar, Kathleen Corradi. Officially, the new director of rodent mitigation. She's a rat activist and a former elementary school teacher. Now, Koradi has one job and one job only: to win the battle against millions of rats, because they're everywhere. Rats seem to be one with New York, so much so that they even feature in its pop culture. Remember Splinter, the wise martial arts master from the cartoon Ninja Turtles? Or Phoebe from popular sitcom Friends? She wanted to raise the mice living in her cupboard. Or the viral pizza rat, who's seen carrying a large single slice of pizza down the stairs? As cute as these portrayals may seem, rats are a nuisance in New York.
You know, we joke about it, but all of you to think about, imagine coming home and opening your cabinet and having a rat come out. Or like those mothers that said to me back when I was the borough president, they came into my office with photos of bite marks on their children, their babies in their carriages.
They are a top public concern, along with the likes of crime, homelessness, and rising rents.
The rats are taking over. They're on the subways, on the platforms. We've got pizza rat. We've got rats everywhere you turn.
I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with the sanitation department. They don't pick up the garbage and they leave the streets, you know, ripe for, you know, for rats to be around.
I think, well, they put some traps, but I don't know if they're working on. I mean, if they really check the traps very often, or, I mean, not traps, also like a poison, you know, something like that they put in it. But I guess so. I think they need to put more attention on this because it's a lot.
There's the obvious ick factor, but more than that, rats spread deadly diseases, which can cause dizziness, food poisoning, and even organ failure. In 1860, a newborn child was mutilated and killed by rats. There are no recent reports of death by rats, but bites are relatively common. This is why New York wants to combat them. It seems like the city has tried everything, poured in tens of millions of dollars, put up rules limiting how long garbage can sit out, poisoned the rodents, used dry ice to suffocate their burrows, physically tried to catch them, and even deployed a rodent academy that has cadres of foot soldiers with a mission to vanquish these rats. But nothing worked. Now, the hopes of the Big Apple lie with Koradi. She wants to take away food sources for the rats and launch a rat mitigation zone, which will be a $3.5 million project.
Rat mitigation is more than a quality of life issue. Rats are the symptom of systemic issues, including sanitation, health, housing, and economic justice. You can't just deal with one part of the problem and call it a day. We need system-wide solutions, strong leadership, and an engaged population to join the efforts. That's where I come in.
New Yorkers are hoping that this works, because if it doesn't, the last resort will probably be hiring a Pied Piper, who can lure the rats away with his magic tune. And we all know how that story ends.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. We're starting with Bolivia. Teachers in this South American country have been protesting. They want more funds for the education sector, but their demonstrations have turned violent, and police resorted to tear gas and explosives to deal with the situation. In the US, a massive fire broke out at a recycling plant in Indiana. Authorities have ordered thousands of locals to evacuate. Parts of the US state of Florida are witnessing floods. The situation is so bad that a person was seen swimming on a flooded street. In Colombia, one of Pablo Escobar's cocaine hippos died after being run over by a car. And finally, taking you back in history, what makes April the 13th significant? A dark day in Indian history. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre took place on this day in 1919. British forces opened fire on an unarmed crowd in the city of Amritsar, killing several hundred people. The brutal massacre of innocent Indians was a turning point in our freedom movement. We're leaving you with this. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. US and Russia are dangerously close to an armed conflict. This year, 2023, New Delhi will be the capital of global diplomacy. For a country as diverse as ours, with 88% of the population illiterate, it was a very big deal to write a constitution, and that too, the world's largest. Meanwhile, if we may, here's a Republic Day gift from India for the BBC. A list of suggestions for the BBC for their upcoming documentaries. Number 1, the Kohinoor and the colonial loot. Number 2, an outdated monarchy and unhealthy obsession with the royals. Number 3, racism in 2023. We're waiting.